Before you tune this out as yet another partisan arcane debate, the kind that Washington specializes in, here are the details, because it's not that. There's a lot at stake here, far beyond the short-term political advantage of either party. You've been interviewed by the investigation, the Mueller investigation, is that correct?
Yes, today at noon I spent 3 hours with investigators in the special counsel's office.
What did you learn?
I'll tell you, they know more about the Trump campaign than anybody that worked there, and they know more about what I did in 2016 than I do myself.
What are they looking at specifically? Like, what did you learn? Where do they think the collusion took place?
I don't really want to interfere with the investigation. I was warned about that. And my attorneys also asked me to be careful about this, but I can tell you they're looking
so they're threatening and intimidating you, basically, it sounds like.
I'm not going to be friending them on Facebook today, if that's what you're asking. I don't find them to be very friendly people. What's it like to live in a country where, having not been charged or convicted of any crime, a prosecutor can threaten you to shut up in public? It's not nice, but I can tell you that it's nothing compared to the $125,000 in legal bills that I've stacked up for nothing. It's nothing compared to the death threats that my family and I are getting. It's nothing compared to the piece of a sniper rifle that came in the mail to my wife last month. It's nothing compared to the way that they're trashing my family. What's happening to me and my family is happening to many other people in this investigation, and I'm just a witness. I can't imagine if somebody's a subject or a target what they're going to go through. But I can tell you this. Wait, can I just back up for one sec? Since you just spoke to the investigators today, when they suggested, in the way that the mafia suggests, maybe you shouldn't do that. What do you think the penalty would be if you ignored that suggestion? I don't think there would be any penalty, but I think I might be called back for a little visit. And every time I come to Washington for this bogus investigation, whether it's the Senate, the House, or whatever, I get to pay another 20, 25 grand. So they just bankrupt you. That's no big deal. Not just me. I think other people, too. I mean, a tin cup isn't a good look, but I've had to open a GoFundMe page. I mean, I certainly didn't sign up for this. My legal fees are going to be at least $125,000. That's more than I make in a year. That's more than where I live in East Aurora, New York. That's more than most people in my town make. And I don't know how we're going to pay that off. I will never, ever work on another Republican campaign for as long as I live.
Carter Page is almost the Forrest Gump in this whole tale. Keeps popping up everywhere, but after these many, many investigations, nobody can quite figure out what he did for the Trump campaign, let alone whether he did anything wrong. The key Forrest Gump moment came on March 21st, 2016, when then-candidate Donald Trump appeared at a Washington Post edit board meeting, and the first question was about how he was going to finally reveal his foreign policy team. The context being it was hard for an anti-establishment candidate to get Republican foreign policy stalwarts on his team. So he wanted outside-the-box choices. The future president revealed only 5 names. One was Carter Page, setting off a scramble over who this man of mystery was. Bloomberg News quickly noted the only real connection was they're both contrarians on Russia, wanting to work with Vladimir Putin in part because they believe policymakers in both parties are still clinging to a Cold War mindset. He worked on arms control policy at the Pentagon, earned 3 graduate degrees, including a PhD from the University of London. By 2000, he jumped into investment banking at Merrill Lynch. Because of a friendship with the Ukrainian billionaire, the firm had him open the Moscow office in 2004.
You go to Moscow, you say you were invited to give a speech at a college there. Mm-hmm. When you went there, did you meet with government officials or people connected closely with Putin?
So
Yes
I gave a speech, and there was one senior government official who spoke after me. He was walking out of the building after he gave his speech, and we had a very brief conversation for less than 10 seconds. You know, it was really a exchange of pleasantries. But a lot of the things he was talking about, you could tell there were positive opportunities on the horizon in terms of U.S.-Russia relations.
Are you suing the U.S. government over what they did?
Absolutely. My main focus right now is on the defamation front, and so that's moving along. But it's similar to the FISA court, right, where they're completely overloaded and they're not able to.
Is the list going to be long?
Well, I think I have a lot of media people, very heavy hitters that I'm up against. I'm focused right now on the false propaganda, and that's imminently clear that the U.S. government was funding this big campaign. And so I'm currently focused on that. All I want from the U.S. government is $1, just show and to start acting responsibly, you know, particularly the Department of Justice.
Prove that they were wrong about you.
Absolutely.
FBI agents descended on Paul Manafort's Alexandria, Virginia apartment in an unannounced pre-dawn raid late last month, according to the Washington Post.
A dozen federal agents stormed the Virginia condo before sunrise. The search lasted 10 hours. The source describing the raid as, quote, heavy-handed and designed to intimidate.
By worst cases, a white-collar crime stuff. And you go into a house at 4 or 5 in the morning with weapons shown. You drag a woman out of bed in her nightgown, and the children are, I assume, screaming, yelling around the house. I mean, that's just an outrage.
It marks a significant step in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation.
We don't operate like that in the United States.
Agents raided Manafort's home one day after he met behind closed doors with the Senate Intelligence Committee.
The only possible violation there would be, was it a campaign finance violation, which usually would result in a fine, by the way, not this big stormtroopers coming in and breaking down his apartment and breaking down his office.
The raid appears to be unusual since Manafort has repeatedly claimed he is cooperating. Manafort turned in approximately 400 pages to the Senate Judiciary Committee on August 2nd.
The special counsel has filed a request for 70 blank subpoenas in the case of Paul Manafort. In other words, Mueller now has the power to subpoena dozens of Americans so long as he writes a name on the paper before he serves the documents.
Judge T.S. Ellis in Virginia, he's been on the bench a long time. He was appointed by Ronald Reagan, so he's been on there for decades. He challenged the Manafort case. He challenged Mueller. He suggested the special counsel was lying and just going after Manafort to get at President Trump. Pretty incredible stuff. You don't really care about Mr. Manafort's bank fraud. What you really care about is what information Mr. Manafort could give you that would reflect on Mr. Trump or lead to his prosecution or impeachment. There you go, you had a federal judge call out Mueller for the dishonesty of his investigation.
Mueller's latest target, according to recent news reports, is longtime Republican political consultant Roger Stone.
CNBC reporting Mueller's focusing sharply on Manafort's former deputy, Rick Gates, and his links to Trump aide Roger Stone. He is a longtime confidant to President Trump. He even pushed Trump to consider running for president multiple times before 2016, as far back as the 80s.
What about you has triggered the scrutiny of Mueller? What crime is he suggesting you committed?
Well, Tucker, perhaps it's my advocacy of the election of Donald Trump and my 40-year friendship for him and my role in advocating and working for his election.
News reports have said that you were the subject of a FISA warrant. In other words, the federal government was reading your email, tapping your phone, following you around, whatever, was surveilling you using our intel and law enforcement agencies. Do you believe that's true?
Well, the New York Times reported on January 20th of 2017 that I was the subject of a FISA warrant. What their probable cause would be is hard to understand other than my strong support for Donald Trump. I have the Project for Democracy, an Obama-blessed front, suing me in the District of Columbia. What's their claim? Oh, that I worked with the Russians to hack the DNC email and gave the information to WikiLeaks. They don't produce any evidence or proof. They produce a theory. Now, the Democratic National Committee has filed a virtually mirror lawsuit in the courts in New York. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars just to move to dismiss these suits. I'm facing the prospect of
what does this investigation cost you?
Well, between the House Intelligence Committee, the Project Democracy or Project for Democracy lawsuit, the early rumblings of the Senate Intelligence and Judiciary Committee, a lawsuit in Miami from a Chinaman named Miles Kwok, which is a total quack of Schiff, and the prospect now of a probe by Mr. Mueller into non-existent communications and machinations with Mr. Gates, I could be looking at legal fees of up to $1 million. Anybody who wants to help can go to stonedefensefund.com.
Breaking news just in, the New York Times just reported that the FBI today raided the offices of President Trump's longtime attorney, Michael Cohen.
We've learned that at least one phone call conversation between a line belonging to Michael Cohen and the White House was also intercepted.
The FBI also seized emails, tax documents, and business records.
When lawyers think about cooperating with the prosecutors, they have to know that in exchange for cooperation, they'll get treated decently. And here you have lawyers cooperating. Trump's lawyers cooperated completely. Cohen cooperated completely. And what did they get for it? A raid on the office with everything being taken.
Basic norms were violated here. Attorney-client privilege is an ancient and a vital concept. And by the way, so is privacy. The FBI bulldozed all of that. Let's hope they had a very good reason for doing it.
This may be an attempt to squeeze Cohen. He's the lawyer. He's the guy who knows all the facts about Donald Trump, and to get him to turn against his client.
The government better have evidence that Michael Cohen was doing something awful, putting lives at stake or betraying his country or something really beyond the pale in order to justify this.
Look, this is a very dangerous day today for lawyer-client relations. I deal with clients all the time. I tell them on my word of honor that what you tell me is sacrosanct. And now they say, just based on probable cause, even though this was cooperation with Cohen, they can burst into the office, grab all the computers, and then give it to another FBI agent and say, you're the firewall. We want you now to read all these confidential communications. Tell us which ones we can get and which ones we can't get.
You know, I look back at some records and during the SNLs in the 80s and 90s, you remember that. You know, yes. Literally thousands of SNLs that went belly up, and a lot of corruption, a lot of criminality. Not one law firm was ever served with a search warrant for that whole period of time.
Michael Cohen, by the way, still doesn't know why his office was raided, and his phones and email were apparently monitored by the government because nobody in government will tell him, and they're not required to tell him. How Orwellian is that, by the way? Imagine if it happened to you. If one day armed men arrived at your office or your home and seized your phone, your computers, and your files at gunpoint.
You know, if this were the shoe on the other foot, if this were Hillary Clinton being investigated and they went into her lawyer's office, the ACLU would be on every television station in America jumping up and down. The deafening silence of the ACLU and civil libertarians about the intrusion into the lawyer-client confidentiality is really appalling.
If it turns out that all of this was just about a financial settlement with some porn star, then what we're watching is a grotesque violation of civil liberties. And that would be a real crime, one with actual victims. Every American who believed in representative democracy, for example. There's no allegation that you committed a crime. But they've so intimidated you that you can't talk about your conversation on this show right now, and you're retiring from campaign politics forever.
I'm never going to work on a Republican campaign again unless somebody legally indemnifies me. Clearly, these lawsuits after the fact are the new Democratic strategy. When you lose, you still win. I'm never going. I don't think anybody should work on a Republican campaign again unless they're legally indemnified. I think if you do, you're crazy.
You know, I just think these people are out of control. From the very time that Donald Trump was the nominee of the Republican Party, there has been a conspiracy, a fifth column, call it what you want, that has tried to stop him from getting elected, and number two, stop his effective work for the people of this country.
What you're looking at is a political campaign waged with guns and subpoenas and the surveillance power of the U.S. government.
They're looking at WikiLeaks. They're looking at Guccifer. They're looking at, DC leaks. Everything that you see in the media that's been leaked out there, that's certainly what they're looking at.
What we are seeing is just the increased attempt to criminalize what in many cases are simply policy differences. People on the other side of the aisle, an election outcome you don't like, and you say, let's prosecute.
It's the reason why Edward Snowden decided to risk going to prison, because he was so concerned that this huge, massive surveillance state was being constructed in secret, directed not just at foreign adversaries, but inward, domestically at the American people, without anybody knowing about it.
This is a punishment strategy. I think they want to destroy the president. They want to destroy his family. They want to destroy his businesses. They want to destroy his friends, so that no billionaire in, let's say, 15 years wakes up and tells his wife, you know what, the country's broken and only I can fix it. His wife will say, are you crazy? Did you see what happened to Donald Trump and everybody around him?